Today on Locked On Canadiens, can anybody beat the Florida Panthers? Is Claude Giroux coming to Montreal? What draft picks are available? And how can Juraj Slafkovsky elevate his game next season? That's all coming up today on Locked On Canadiens.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 1334 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that helps us here at the show and ensures you do not miss an episode. And you don't want to miss an episode of this show. We are Locked On Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We're still doing 5 shows a week. So make sure if you want Canadiens content in your mailbox when you wake up in the morning, subscribe to Locked On Canadiens. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as Maybe It's Ian. You may have seen my work before at rabbithabs.com or the Build podcast. And I'm joined by Laura Saba, also known as the Actor Stick. You may have seen her at Habs Eyes on the Prize and on Hockey Primetime. Laura, the NHL season from a game's perspective is over. This is always like, it's raining where I am. It's always a sad day for me because now we don't have hockey forever. Do you get like a melancholy feeling on this day as well?
Actually, not really, because silly season is about to start, right? So there's a period of time where the Canadiens are eliminated and they are no longer playing that I'm half interested in the playoffs. Obviously, Stanley Cup final, everybody watches that. But my sadness is when I no longer can see my team. So I get it out of my system. And now it's more about, all the things we're going to talk about today, actually. There's a lot of silliness and there's a lot of rumors, but there's also we've already had a couple of trades. And I think just because we're recording a little bit earlier than we normally do, I am fully expecting Kent Hughes to pull off a blockbuster trade later this evening when we're recording this. So we're going to have to jump right back on and do an episode.
Yeah, we've been pretty lucky, at least in my era on this show. We've only ever had to re-record once, and it was the Justin Barron trade because we literally stopped recording and we were just shooting the breeze in the room afterwards, and you literally stopped me mid-sentence and said, Ian, stop, we need to record another episode. They just traded Justin Barron. I was like, it's already so late. So look, we're gonna jump into silly season as well. First we'll talk about the Florida Panthers and their Stanley Cup victory and whether or not a team can beat them. We'll go into Rumour Roundup. I've got the hat. We're going to talk about the draft picks that might be available in the first round across the NHL and how that impacts Montreal. And a quick little tidbit on Claude Giroux, tying him to the Montreal Canadiens. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent on July 1st, so we'll talk about that. And then it's our season review for Juraj Slafkovsky. We'll talk about the season that was and the expectations for him heading into the first year of his big contract. So we'll get to that stuff throughout the show. But let's start. Florida Panthers, they win the Stanley Cup in 6 games over Edmonton, going back-to-back over the same team. Edmonton does not look like they are poised to react well from this if some of the news around them is to be believed. It looks like they're going to sign Trent Frederick to an 8-year contract, which is just bonkers behavior you should not be doing. But I don't want to talk about the Oilers. I want to talk about Florida because what we're seeing a lot of is this resignation to the fact that no one's going to be able to beat this Panthers team. Do you think that's true?
No, I don't. I think the biggest thing that Florida had over people is less toughness. Don't yell at me. The biggest thing that Florida had over all the other teams was depth. Every part of their lineup was functioning, and it was functioning well. Yes, we can talk about the toughness. Yes, we can talk about all the things they get away with, which, Andrew Berkshire has a great kind of a piece on it, but also has talked about it extensively. Yes, they're going to get away with some things because the refs are not going to call everything. They're going to call 5 or 6 things in a game. They're not going to call 12 or 13, right? So They're going to get away with another 5, 6, 7 things. But that's not why they won. They won because they were deeper up and down their lineup. There was no match for them. They were just relentless. The reason was because if one part of their lineup wasn't scoring until they picked it back up later in that same game, a different part of their lineup was doing that, right? Defensively, you were not able to make things happen against them. They, like Connor McDavid, like literally the best player in the world, they were able to contain him Why? Because they are the Florida Panthers. They are deep. The way that they're constructed. Yes, it is important to be tough. Do not get me wrong. But you need and Bobrovsky. Let's be honest. Stuart Skinner.
He was great.
Right? Not so good. You're not going to win a Stanley Cup with your save percentage beginning with an 8. I'm sorry, that's not how it happens usually.
What about a 7, Laura? Because I think the Oilers goalies were probably closer to a 7 by the end of the series.
Also not a recipe for success. But like literally the biggest thing with Florida Panthers. So if you want to beat Florida, you have to amass the same depth of talent. That is literally it. That is the formula for beating the Florida Panthers. It is not, I need a guy that's 6'2" that can't skate or can't hit or can't score or can't shoot or can't transition. I need a guy that is good at hockey. I need all of the people in all of these positions to be. Look at who's the second line center on the Florida Panthers.
The guy who just won the Conn Smythe.
Literally the second line center, right? Like 2C or not 2C. We talk about it every day on this show. The reason it has to be somebody good is because one day you will have to face a team like Florida. The only way you're going to beat them is with depth. Like if you look at the teams that Florida has played, they're like arguably you can say that Austin Matthews has more talent than anyone on the Florida Panthers roster. Like if you just look at it from a pure talent perspective, right? But they don't have that depth. Like Florida was just able to overcome that with everybody. You just could not match it. And so for me, like when people say like we need to be like Florida, yes, just be careful which direction you're going in. You don't need to get that dirty. Yes, you should be tough. Yes, you should be able to be smart and get away with some things. Absolutely. Yeah. But you're gonna get a penalty called on you. You better have the best PK in the league. If you're going to be doing that dirty stuff, you better be able to back it up. You better have that good goaltending, right? And everything with Florida is that, we talked about how Montreal swept them in the regular season. Why? Once in a while, there was somebody missing from their lineup, right? Like Matthew Tkachuk wasn't there a couple of those games or one of those games, right? All of that kind of stuff. But the second the whole team came together, there was no looking back. And you could even see it form. You saw it form. I think it was game 6, game 4, game 5. I don't know. It was one of the games against Toronto. They went from just being like just a team that's there to like turning back into the Stanley Cup winning roster of the Florida Panthers.
Yeah. I like a lot of what you said. I think, the Panthers, after they had won and they're talking to reporters on the ice, it was a lot of them, talking about the culture that they built there. And the last team that won a Stanley Cup that kind of changed the way people were trying to build Stanley Cup winners was the Boston Bruins in 2011. It changed hockey for a while, and not for the better. Like it changed it and it went in a negative direction because I think people took the wrong thing away from that Bruins team. And I think people are going to take the wrong thing away from this Panthers team, which is that it's not that, well, we just need the biggest, toughest guys we can find. No. You need to have all of your guys who can play that way. It's a mindset. It's a mentality for that team. I want to read a crazy stat from David Johnson at Hockey Analysis on Blue Sky. He says this is crazy. In the Stanley Cup Finals, 13.8% of Edmonton's 5-on-5 shots on goal came from outside the blue line. That was 3.8% in the regular season and 5.3% in the first 3 rounds. Florida's aggressive forecheck tired Edmonton's forwards, forcing on-goal dump-ins and line changes instead of rush opportunities. And boy, like that completely plainly spells out exactly how the Oilers lost. And because they had to lean on Draisaitl and McDavid so often, especially those last 2 games, they were just every other shift, those two were coming over the boards. The Panthers just wore them out. They had no gas left. So I think if you want to take something away from this Panthers team, it's that you need a roster that can all play this way. And that's tough to find, right? Like we're looking at draft profiles, right? We're looking at that guy's 6'4", that guy's 6'5", that guy's 250 pounds. But like, that's only part of the equation. You need to find guys who will step into that room and play that role. Yes. They're still trying to get like Juraj Slafkovsky. We're going to talk about him later. They're still trying to get him to play that smash mouth brand of hockey because they know he can be super effective at it, and he has to lead by that example. I think that I deeply hope that we don't take away from this, that we need face punchers and just guys who lay the body, because the Panthers, like saying that they're just that, it does them such a disservice. They're an incredible hockey team. And, pointing at the front office, the last point I'll make, this core is locked up forever at reasonable prices. Barkov until 2030 at $10 million a year. Tkachuk at 9.5 until 2030. Sam Reinhart until 2032 at 8.6. Carter Verhaeghe until 2033 at $7 million. Anton Lindell until 2030 at $5 million. Bill Zito, I don't know how he doesn't win the general manager of the year award every single year. That roster is perfectly constructed. Yes, they have UFA stuff to sort out. I don't really care. They're going to be able to build around what those guys have. Do you have any final thoughts on this year's Stanley Cup final and what to take away before we move on?
Yeah, literally. Yes, you do want those tough guys that can play like that, but they have to be talented too. You look at Matthew Tkachuk, right? Compare Matthew Tkachuk to a Ben Sherrod. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, it's a great play. All right, we'll leave the Florida Panthers and the 2024-25 NHL season there. When we come back, we have Rumour Roundup. We'll talk about some draft picks that might be available in the first round and how that might flood the market for the Canadiens. We'll talk about Claude Giroux potentially being a Montreal Canadian, and then we'll get into Juraj Slafkovsky's season review, all on Locked On Canadiens when we come back. Are you looking for a snack that's both nutritious and delicious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no-shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days, whether I'm at my desk or I'm on the road, and I just need a quick protein boost. I know I can go to them. They're my go-to. I especially like the different varieties of no-shell, like the sea salt and vinegar and chili roasted. But if you like cracking into every shell for that satisfying crunch, don't worry. We haven't forgotten about you. The in-shell options are always a classic favorite. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. All right, quick change failed. We're back. We're back on Locked On Canadiens with Rumour Roundup, which is why the cowboy hat is back on. To people who keep saying it's too small, yes, I know. That's kind of the bit. That's why
the joke.
Joke. Thank you for explaining the joke to me. That's why it's funny. We move on. Look, we're going to talk about some draft picks because there's a lot of news around picks that may or may not be available. And we're going to talk about Claude Giroux and a quick snippet and an article from Bruce Garriock about how that negotiation is going with the Ottawa Senators. This draft pick conversation spawned from a report from Frank Saravalli that the Chicago Blackhawks are listening to offers on the 3rd overall pick for a difference maker. I wanted to go through the exercise of finding exactly what first round picks might be available based on reports. So I did. Chicago's at 3rd overall. We know that might be available for a difference maker. Utah's at 4. We know that they want a young, proven top 6 forward. That was from Dave Pagnotta in the 4th period. We know that both of Montreal's picks are available, so that's 4. And then there are some repeat teams in here. If Nashville, I don't know what they're doing. Nashville has 3 picks in the first round. Philadelphia has 3 picks in the first round. I don't know what either of those teams are trying to do. Nashville just acquired Eric Holla. So maybe they're trying to get good now. I mean, it'd be kind of weird given the season they had, but I kind of understand it because of the money and term they have committed to these older players. The note I took away from that was Friedman saying everyone is trying to get better except for Pittsburgh, which an incredible read, just an incredible burn on the Pittsburgh Penguins. I really enjoyed that. But it also it goes to show you that this market is flooded. I wrote down a lyric from one of my favorite bands, Cheekface. The market is flooded with people like me. Our value is plummeting. Now we're worthless and free. None really seem to have a ton of value because everyone's trying to offload them, right?
Yes, everyone's trying to offload them for immediate help, which is stop me if you've heard this before, right? That's kind of the problem the Canadiens are running into, because you would think a team that is drafting 3rd overall or 4th overall would like to take that pick. They would like to take advantage of where they are. But apparently, everyone sees the cap going up and they see their chance to become relevant again. And nobody has any patience with their rebuilds. And I think that that's a mistake. Honestly, like Chicago's not going to listen to me. But getting one good player right now isn't going to solve their problems. It's not.
Yeah.
With Utah, it could be a difference maker, just like, you saw with Montreal, adding Patrick Laine had them go into the playoffs, right? I feel like Utah's kind of like that, where they're not going to become a contender, but they're going to be able to improve their situation, especially like now with like being in a new city. Like it feels very much like when Vegas made the playoffs and when Seattle made the playoffs. Like it feels like it's something worth going for to reward those fans that like started with you from the beginning. And it feels like expansion teams, we used to expect them to be bad for like 10 years, but like the Atlantas and the Columbuses of the world like are no more. It's really like when you are an expansion team now, you have to make your mark ASAP. And I'm rambling a lot, but what I really mean to say is that if everyone is looking for a 2C, then the Canadiens are screwed because they don't have the same things to offer as those other two teams. But if everyone is looking for something and it's not all the same thing, they don't necessarily have to do that trade directly for that draft pick. They could do three-way trades, and I'm fully in support of that. Like that's something that I would like to see is like, okay, well, you have the third and I want it, but this other guy has the player you want, so let's work something out.
Yeah, one pick that I actually missed in there was Boston. Today in RG, Jimmy Murphy said that the Bruins are talking with the Islanders about something potentially big that could involve that pick. I don't know if that means the Bruins are trying to move up to first overall. I doubt they have the pieces to be able to do that, nor should they want to in reality. But he had listed JG Pageau going to Boston as a potential 2C or 3C option for them, which I think makes a lot of sense. It's someone I talked about on this show as a potential Dvorak replacement. So that's another team that is trying to move things out for help now. I just think that the Canadiens are going to have a hard time this year. When we ended the season, we all thought they'll just package those two together and maybe throw a prospect and we'll get a legitimate number 2 center. And I just with every passing day, I just find that that's not going to be reality for this team. Unfortunately, like we all want it. The Canadiens want it. I bet Ivan Demidov wants it. I bet Patty Laine wants it, right? But that's not going to solve this for them. And the Canadiens are not going to make a play for somebody that they don't see as a fit with this team. So I don't know if there's yeehaws to be awarded there, Laura. I guess yeehaws for realism on this market. Do you think it's pretty much a dead market, or I should say a flooded market for picks?
Yeah, I think so. I think there's definitely 4 to 5 yeehaws there.
Yeah, agreed. All right, let's do the Claude Giroux roundup even. This was in the Ottawa Citizen from Bruce Garriock. He's been chronicling the Ottawa Senators' attempts to re-sign pending unrestricted free agent Claude Giroux. And this little snippet comes from that article. Giroux's top priority is to re-sign with the Senators. But with only 12 days to free agency, he could decide to test the market. His family has a good situation in Ottawa, but league executives say he might be willing to consider the Montreal Canadiens if they show interest on July 1st. What do you make of that, Laura Saba?
It is the annual player linked to Montreal in order to get more money or more return.
Yeah, it is. And, we can't even say, like, Giroux isn't even a Montreal product. He's from Gatineau, is he not? Like,
no, he's from Hearst. He's from Hearst, Ontario.
Hearst, Ontario,
where,
yes.
I believe Pierre LeBrun is from, which is
yes.
It's Francophone Ontario, but it's not close to us. But that's the thing. It's like just because a guy speaks French or has a French name, we have to connect him to Montreal so that they can get more money. And this might not even be coming from Giroux's camp. Like honestly, it could be. It could very well be coming from Giroux's camp and trying to squeeze more money out of Ottawa. But it could also be just other league executives trying to screw Ottawa over, right? Trying to get them to overpay.
Like maybe Montreal.
That's really funny.
Maybe the Canadiens trying to put that word out there to make the Senators have to overpay to keep Claude Giroux in Ottawa. Like, I don't know. That's kind of a tinfoil hat theory, but it is super fun to think about.
I would love it if that was the case. Like Kent Hughes has like little moles everywhere planting these. I will say one thing though, is Claude Giroux he's not a Gatineau product, but that's where his junior career was. That's where he came out of. That's where he met his wife. That's like his wife has close family ties there. They are happy in Ottawa. That family loves Ottawa, right? They wanted to go there when he became a free agent. It was such a huge deal when they did. And everything that you see, like, on their social media, whatever they say, like, they're comfortable in Ottawa. They want to stay there. So it's really just a matter of trying to put some tension into the proceedings in order to get more money out of Ottawa.
Yeah, the thought here is also that Ottawa kind of just wants to do a 1-year deal and Giroux wants at least 2. So that's the sticking point here. He's 35 years old, so if his play falls off, he's a 35 plus contract. They don't really get a lot of help, cap wise on those deals. So we'll continue to follow this. Yeehaw's like, is this exciting for you, or did we just kind of clock this immediately for what it was? And
immediately,
like, there's really entertainment and reality, 0 out of 5 yeehaws. Like, it's very plain to see what happened.
And if Montreal does sign Claude Giroux, I'm happy to eat crow on this podcast.
Cool. Yeah, for sure. But right now, this in a vacuum just seems like someone trying to pump this guy's value. Like, to me,
it's here we go again.
We see it. We've graduated from the days of like Daniel Briere, and in the past it wasn't even French players. Like, remember Wayne Simmons doing the same thing, and then we landed Corey Perry, and we're halfway on his way to cursing every single Stanley Cup finalist. Anyway, it's a different story for a different day. When we come back, we're going to talk about the season that was for Juraj Slafkovsky, talk about the newfound expectations for him as he heads into his big first NHL contract, and we'll get into that in just a minute. All right, we are back, and it's time to talk about Juraj Slafkovsky and his 24-25 campaign. Laura, we start off each of these player reviews with a word that makes us think of the season that was for this player. When you think of Juraj Slafkovsky, what is that word association exercise generating for you?
Lesson.
In what sense?
In that he has now had 2 seasons in a row where he didn't have a great start and was able to turn it on in the second half. We joke a lot about second half Slav. I know part of this segment is about can he turn it into full season Slav, but there's something about the way that he played in the second half of this season where it felt like last year it was more of like, oh, his breakout year, he's getting noticed. This year, I felt that, even though he had that tough first half, the second half, he was building on what he had last year's second half, right? So if we could just get a full season of him building. And so for me, like, this was a lesson. One, you have to start the season right. You have to start the season on the right foot. There are multiple conversations that he had with the coaches and with Kent Hughes, right? Like a couple come to Jesus moments. And those are really, really important. So I feel like this is going to be really valuable. Something that people point out all the time is that he's still very young, right? Like, he and Lane Hutson are effectively the same age. So we hold them both to a really high standard. And I think he's not helped by how good Lane Hutson is. But at the same time, like, he is 21 years old. There is still so much for him to learn. He's a baby, right? I'm not saying we should excuse non-performance. I'm saying that this is something that as you mature, you have to learn. How many times did we say immature when we talked about the Canadiens this year? He was probably one of the top people in our minds when we were saying those words, right?
Sure.
So like this year for him, I think, was a lesson. So next year, it's not really, to me, a question of is it full season Slav? Next year, my question is, did he learn from this year? Like, did he show up having learned those lessons that we saw this year?
Yeah, I think the word that comes to mind for me, for whatever reason, is prequel. That everything we've seen to this point was the Slafkovsky prequel, right? I know since he signed that deal last summer. Was it last summer? Did he only play through this 1 year? Yeah, he must have. He signed that 7-year extension worth $7.6 million. People started immediately holding him to that standard, which was unfair because he didn't get paid that way this year. He got paid in his entry-level cap hit. So it to me, all of this is leading up to next season in that, that's not going to be acceptable anymore. You know, 51 points currently. What he has is, I think, 51 points, maybe a little bit more. If he's more consistent throughout the season, I think we're cool with it. And especially if he develops into that power forward whose output is more important than the points that he scores. You know, he's on the boards, you know, knocking the puck off of guys, helping get the puck to the middle for Suzuki and Caulfield. That's the vision they have for this guy. It's why they sat him down before that one game against the Ottawa Senators. I think it was immediately after Four Nations where they sat him down and were like, you need to play like Brady Tkachuk. And he did it for that one game. He was Brady Tkachuk. And we didn't really see it again. Yes, he played very intense games, and he keeps getting to a point where he can have that stuff in moments. But Tkachuk doesn't have that in moments.
He has that all the time.
He comes over the boards in that mindset all the time. Both Tkachuks, honestly. I mean, the one that just won the cup, Matthew, was playing with a muscle torn off of the bone and a hernia. A hernia thing is what he said afterwards. I can't even believe those words came out of his mouth. Anyway, I'm not saying for Slaf to play injured. I'm saying for him to play like kind of a psychopath.
Yeah.
And I think if he does that, that line is going to be even more effective than it already has been, which if you're a frequent listener of this show, you know we are big boosters of that line and think that line is one of the best in the National Hockey League because statistically it has been.
We don't think it. The numbers say it. I mean, we think it, but the numbers back us up.
Yeah.
We didn't make that up.
Yeah. And it's, you know, it's funny. The Canadiens for years have always had a line that was one of the better ones in the league. Like it was always the Gallagher, whatever line Gallagher's on is always really good for obvious reasons, because Gallagher does a lot of things that drive those stats in the right direction. But for it to finally be a first line on this team and to illustrate that they have the top level talent to be able to compete, I mean, to me, that's the best sign of this rebuild is that they found that line.
Yeah.
Yes, they might get broken up from time to time to get some offense going on different lines, or if that line gets stagnant, they can, move things around. But the fact that they have this to constantly go back to, and they don't have to worry about the line construction of Suzuki, Caulfield, and Slafkovsky. I mean, Slaf's a big factor in that. And, he just turned 21. We said he's young. On March 30th, he turned 21 years old. He played almost all of his entry-level contract without being able to drink in the United States. Like that's kind of, we have to put it into perspective because he's already played in his NHL career 200 games.
Yeah.
Our expectations for him are obviously very high because he was a first overall pick, but he's 21 years old and he's already played 200 NHL games and he's dealt with injuries and whatnot. Like I'm going into next season very hopeful that he has figured this out and he's going to spend the summer, getting into the right mindset to compete next year. Because if he starts next season slowly, then you're going to start getting that valid criticism of, okay, it's time for you to step up. You make $7.6 million now. We can't have second half Slaf only in February.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, what I want from Slafkovsky is this time next year when we're doing his review, the word is psychopath. Yeah,
I would love that. I would love that a lot. Psycho Slaf.
Yeah.
Let's do it. All right, let's leave that there and let's hit our trivia and then head out of here for the day. Yesterday's question was regarding goaltending. Sam Montembeault recorded 31 wins this season, his first time hitting the 30-win plateau. How many times has a Habs goalie recorded at least 30 wins in a season? Do you know the answer to this one, Laura? I think I gave it to you.
You did, but now I don't remember it.
It was 33. 33 seasons in Canadiens history have seen one of their goalies record at least 30 wins. Super Rain got that right. And I do want to point out, Good Sport also got another question right in this that I had written down in my notes when I recorded this question yesterday. Plant and Dryden lead the way with 7 seasons each of 30 win play, which is just, it's kind of bonkers to think about. Carey Price probably would have been there had he not been hurt all the time. I think he ended with 5, but Ken Dryden wasn't around for all that long. For him to record 7 seasons with 30 wins is kind of nuts. Anyway, so Super Rain and Good Sport, thanks for playing and thanks for telling us how smart you are. All right, today's question is Juraj Slafkovsky themed. Juraj Slafkovsky scored his first NHL goal against a team that no longer exists. Which of his current teammates can say the same about themselves? So which of Juraj Slafkovsky's teammates also scored his first NHL goal against a team that no longer exists? If you have the answer, put it in the comments down below or send it to us any way you know how, and we'll give you a shout out on the next episode of the show if you're right. And that's going to do it for us today on this episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast doing that supports us here on the show and ensures you do not miss an episode. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NHL podcast. There is no off season, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We're also available on Amazon Fire TV. On your free Fire TV channels app, click the Montreal Canadiens logo in the hockey section. You can watch all of our episodes there as well. You can find us posting things at Locked On Canadiens everywhere we're posting things, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok. LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com if you want to reach out to us. We're recording our mailbag. Thursday, we record our mailbags for our Friday episode, so send in your questions, and we'll get to them on the next episode of the show. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you guys tomorrow.